Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and then listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week. And it's sponsored by Hercules Credit Union.
PK.
Yes.
Happy anniversary-ish.
Thank you.
I'm not sure exactly what the date is, but we're coming up on early April. I know it's 22 years of doing the show together. And in those 22 years, the one constant has been the line of
baseball,
people.
Ray.
No,
baseball, Ray.
Well, actually, probably has been baseball. But in addition, it's been a line of people to the right of us, a line of people to the left of us.
Jokers in the middle?
Yeah, right. All stopping by to say, guys, college football is going to look very different going forward. Just you wait. There are changes coming. And all those people have been right because there have already been changes, conference realignment, NIL, transfer portal. There are more changes coming, more realignment. In 22 years, there hasn't been a day that we have been on the air that there hasn't been something going on with the future of college football.
Yep.
And added to the long list now, question up on our Facebook page, what do you make of the proposed Super League composed of 80 college football programs that pays players? You're going to have investment bankers jumping into this thing, throwing money up front, be able to make the employees, make the players employees, make some of these lawsuits go away. They could bankrupt these programs. And they want to put in 70 teams permanently, kind of favored nation status. They're permanent members of the Super League. And the way I read it was if you were in one of the Power 5 leagues last year, you're in, which means BYU and Utah would be in. And there's 10 more spots that you can play your way into relegation style. The 70, Purdue and Vanderbilt aren't getting relegated. And BYU and Utah apparently wouldn't either. There'd be 10 spots left that the other 63 and maybe more if more teams join the bowl subdivision would be battling for 60 teams would be battling for 10 spots, and some would rotate in and out every year. So the Utah State would have a shot at playing their way in and then staying there, if they were able to play. So what do you make of all of this? And Tony says, Pandora's box has been opened. You're not putting the genie back in the bottle now. Money makes the sports world go round, and college football is no exception. I think we've lost amateur sports as we once knew it. The new NFL G League is set to debut in 2030. He thinks it's coming, but not until some of these TV contracts are up.
Well, I think it's got to come. Get on with it. The amateur spiel, the Olympics didn't fall apart when they basically did away with that, right? And so we've got the pros participating, particularly in basketball, the highest profile thing they got going on in the Summer Olympic deal that we all watch. And that is probably better than it was. So here, they just need to stop with the nonsense. It's not about academics. It's about cash. So knock it off. I've been saying that for, you're right, 22 years. Questions for the student athletes.
You've actually set up for more than 22 years because I would talk to you in the lobby of the Huntsman Center before games, and you would say it then. And I wouldn't argue with you then. It's just more cash every decade.
Right. Yeah, so go where you're going to go and get there as soon as possible. When I had a college, if I had a test, I wanted it at 8 a.m., not 3 p.m. Get on with it. It's going to be there, so do it. To me, this is obvious. This is where they're going to go. Kyle Whittingham has been talking about it for so many years, and he's probably going to be out of the game by the time it gets here, but so what? Get going with it. Make it what it is. Make it what it already is, and quit trying to camouflage it and disguise it as something that it isn't.
I remember probably 22 years ago. I can't remember the exact time, but I know the Utes were still in the Mountain West. So it's got to be 15 years ago, and it might be 20 or 25 years ago. And I remember talking to Chris Hill and saying they could go with 80 programs. Jackie Sherrill threw that number out, the former Texas A&M football coach, and said 8 conferences of 10, or you can have the 20-team leagues, but they play in divisions with round robin, so you keep the rivalries going. You have 4 leagues of 20, and you have the championship game at the end. It'd be great. And I mentioned 80, and Chris looked at me without missing a beat, goes, 80 sounds like a very big number to me, David. He didn't think it was going to be 80 teams going forward. The one thing I did think was interesting in this was staggered payouts. And I think one of 2 things is going to happen here going forward. The rich have been cannibalizing the poor, and that's a sliding line, but the richer have been cannibalizing the poorer for years now. And at some point, it's going to happen within leagues. At some point, the only way for Ohio State to get more money isn't going to be to help wreck another league. It's going to be Purdue, Indiana, Rutgers, you're getting less. Or Ohio State, we're getting more. Or they kick those teams out of the league. Kicking them out of the league or leaving the Big Ten to form something new and leaving them behind seems like a more radical move. Restructuring it so that Ohio State gets 3 shares and everybody else gets 1 or 2 shares. I can see that happening. I mean, it's somehow, some way, Ohio State, Michigan, and Alabama or LSU are going to be making more money than Vanderbilt and Rutgers and South Carolina and Purdue. They just are. How they get to that point, I don't know. This says we'll let the bottom of the Big Ten stay in, but you guys are getting paid less. The bottom of the SEC, you're getting paid less. And it'll be, if Utah and BYU are in, presumably, I don't know what kind of share they're going to be getting. It may not be as small as somebody else. It's not going to be as big as Alabama and Ohio State. Are you willing to live with that? Because it certainly tips the playing field as we see the Yankees and Dodgers off to fantastic starts in the first week of the Major League season. No surprise. Doesn't happen every year, but happens more often than that for them than it happens for the Mariners or the Angels or the Rockies or whoever else you want to throw out there.
It's pretty much been happening every year for the Dodgers. I mean,
they've got a nice run going.
They won the division for like 10 years, and the only time they didn't, they won like 102 games or something.
Right.
And the Giants came out of nowhere and won 106.
And then back to your regularly scheduled programming. The Dodgers are awesome again.
And then in the postseason, it's sort of happenstance with those short series and stuff. We've seen that in that sport. It is the postseason might be the most unpredictable occasionally, not always, but occasionally. And we saw that last year with Arizona getting all the way to the series. To me, even if you gave everybody the same amount of money, Ohio States of the world would still be at an advantage because their donors would make sure. It just means that much to them. It means everything. So whether they get it through some television contract or not, the advantages that they have are literally never going away. Never. It'll always be there. As long as this sport of college football is being played, they will be there. Now, they may not necessarily always take advantage of it record-wise, but the financial advantage will always be there. I have complete confidence in saying that. So they can figure out that however they want. And you're still going to have the best and the consistently the worst. I don't think that's going to change. So just include all those teams anyway, and then go. There's got to be some overhaul, some model. I think the sports world and the fans are clamoring for it. I think everyone involved is, and have a complete overhaul that makes more sense. I don't know that you'll ever have a perfect system, but there are ways to make it just make more sense, particularly as you fund these other programs in the athletic programs of these institutions, because it is just going to ruin them. And we don't really care about the water polos of the world and all, but yet we respect the people who are involved in that. We respect the amount of time that the coaches put into it. We respect the amount of time that the participants put into it, because it means a lot to them. And I think if you're a true sports fan, you want to see those sports preserved too, because you want those players and athletes an opportunity to do their thing, men and women, whatever it might be. You want to see them. It's been fun to see women's basketball get a huge uptick in publicity, because I've covered women's college basketball for 3 decades, and I can tell you that those people participate and work just as hard as anybody else. And so it's good to see have their little moment in the sun, so to speak. We want that. No one feels like, oh, we ought to do away with these sports. Not if you're a true sports fan, because you want to see competition. And so figure out a way that is best for them so they're not traveling all over the country to do their thing. And you really have an opportunity here to make this thing right, because it's sort of out of control now, but cut it off and get it right. And that's what I think. That's my hope with these proposals that they come up with.
I don't know if the colleges are going to go for giving up the power. The conferences are going to go for giving up the power. The conferences commissioners can't be excited about this because it sounds like they get legislated right out of the way. So there's a little, there's roadblocks along the way. People who have power, are they likely to give it up? Are they going to have it taken away from them? Who are these deep pocket investors who are going to buy the sport? I don't get all that. Maybe somebody who does can explain it to me. And so I don't know if this is going to fly. But something like this ought to fly. 80 big-time programs, players getting paid. That part of it I get. That all makes sense. Seems like that's where we're going. And I like the bigger number of teams involved because I think it makes it a national sport. I think the way they're headed right now, everyone talks, you talk about this all the time, and I've seen lots of people write about it, like college football is just not a thing in the Northeast. Well, college football isn't as big a thing in the West as it is in the South and the Midwest. But college football in the West is going to be pretty close to nothing if all it is 4 teams west of Omaha, Nebraska. And that's where it is right now. Now, maybe it will evolve and some of these schools will be let in, which I think needs to happen.
Yeah, I don't know if that will change. I don't know that the demand will ever change that. It is so freakazoid in a couple areas in our country, and I think that probably stays the same.
But I think they can make college football less in the West. I don't think everything's going to get stuck right where it is, but if it did get stuck right where it is, having no teams in Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Northern California, that's a bad idea. There's too many people.
Well, I don't think that'll happen, so I agree with you.
Right. So that's what I like about this. Going to 80, I think a lot of communities are going to be represented. They may not have a great shot, but they will be in the mix. And I think that's why the Northeast largely is in the mix. They look around and like, well, where are local teams? Who are we rooting for? I'm out. I'll watch the NFL.
I mean, they root for Notre Dame. They're not any local teams that are really good, but they just root for these. There's 2 or 3 allegiances that they have, and so that's the way it'll be. And then they turn to the NFL. And the problem there is the NFL is just so big, unbelievably huge. Yeah. From Boston to D.C., you've got like a third of the league.
There are 6 pretty high-profile teams in that stretch.
Right.
And it's basically, if it's not Vegas to Salt Lake, it's pretty close. Imagine 6 NFL teams between here and Vegas instead of one in Vegas.
You could go here to Denver.
Yeah.
Or here to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And that's what you have there. So that's never going to change. Those franchises aren't going away. So it's always going to be that way. It's always going to be huge. I think I support what you're saying. The regional representation needs to be there.
Yep.
And then it's up to the individual. If you find a Phil Knight, then you're off and running.
That really is it. Buy your way to the top, baby. Handful of schools have done it. Or you sit in an area with this over-the-top passion you speak of. A century of it, generations of it.
What do we have? Last week, Ian Furness, and when he left Salt Lake, he first went to Portland before he moved up to Seattle.
Yep.
And then he was talking about when he got there that it was understood that Phil Knight got to ask the first questions in the press conference. I mean, he's not a media member, but he basically bought the team. He's the owner. He's the de facto owner of Oregon football. I'm not ripping Oregon. It's just the way it is.
You said they were like a hooker.
Well, they're bought and paid for.
You have ripped them.
Well, that was then, but I was making fun of it.
Okay.
But
Oregon's
now
just
here,
basically
it's
a
the
hooker.
truth, right? And good for Oregon. Way to go. They got somebody who finances everything, so great for them. Sure, I'm jealous, duh, but I'm jealous of a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff that I have, people are jealous of me. So
and it's Oklahoma State football did it, UCLA basketball did it. You get a booster who's all in, you can really, move the needle.
But you have that opportunity to have representation, and then what you do with that opportunity is up to the individual program. And do you get somebody who just wants to pay all sorts of money to get you going? And in those areas in the upper Midwest with Michigan, Ohio State, the answers are yes. And then obviously in the southeastern part of the country, the answers are yes there. And in the Southwest with Texas, yes. We know them. So I don't think that's ever going to change. That's really been no different. And out west, you had SC. And in the 50s and 60s and so forth and into the 70s, they were really, really good. Okay, fine. So that's what you got here. And go ahead and stop with this. This NIL sounds good, but it seems like already it's run amok. And it's only been like a day and a half since it's been around.
And that's part of this deal with the Super League is they become employees.
Right.
Be a little more clear cut. And they are employees now, but people just don't want to say that word out loud.
Well, get past that. And if they want to get an education and graduate and all that, good for them. But if they don't, that's on them too.
I think that's
and there's always going to be a negative consequence.
Kyle Whittingham has said that's where it's going. How quickly, but that's where it's going. The school option will be there for the people who want it, and if you don't want it, you keep playing football and watching film.
Yeah, and we would like to see every young man and every young woman get an opportunity to go to college and graduate. But that's, I don't want kids to get cancer. It happens. There will be massive tragedy that will impact lives for decades. That will happen today. And you just hope it doesn't happen to you. But that's the way of the world. Somebody's going to die in a car wreck today. And it sucks. So that's what we got. And here, recognize this college institution stuff for what it is. And this football here, because there's good for it, too. It's not all bad. Because you're going to pay all this money, and then that money is going to fund the opportunity for the tennis team to play and the men's and women's golf team and so forth and so on. So good for them.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up next, Hans Olsen, BYU football radio analyst and co-host of Hans and Scotty G, joins us to talk spring football. That is next. Stay with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Jay Stevens, Utah Puck Report is a podcast you can go listen to yourself.
The writing is on the wall. I mean, there's $1 billion just approved through legislation. I think the state sees it, the city sees it as an opportunity to kind of revitalize downtown Salt Lake City. So even the people that aren't hockey fans are on board. The NHL really seems to like Ryan Smith. So you just start putting all those pieces together, and it just looks like it's inevitable. And that's how I see it. I see, like, this is something that's happened. This train's coming. You should get on board and enjoy it, and then be able to say I was there from the beginning.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK, and it's time to welcome Hans Olsen back to the show. He talks a lot of sports with Scotty G from noon to 3. He's going to talk a little football with us right now here on The Zone. Hans, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. I've missed you. Thanks for having me on.
I know with you, and PK knows this too, we've talked about it, you guys love your food, you love your food analogies. So we're having you on to talk spring football. Now, spring football is to football as blank is to a meal. I mean, spring football is definitely not half a chicken and a baked potato and a slice of pie, right? I don't know, is it a bowl of soup? Is it a protein bar? Is it a little bit of salad with 2 tomatoes looking at you? What is spring football? Because it's not the real deal. but it's
No,
something.
it's a total meal replacement shake. Is what it is.
All right.
Yeah, it's a bad mix. It's like a protein powder you order. You think you're going to like it because it says cookie and cream on it. You mix it a couple times and you're like, this tastes like cardboard. This is trash. So it gives you the calories that you need. It's hard going down. Eventually you end up throwing the whole bottle out, but it's a meal replacement shake. I think that's the equivalent.
Given that you don't have games and you can't really know stuff for sure, is there something? And I know you're calling BYU games, so that's where you're spending most of your time and attention. But you've got ex-teammates / ex-friends / guys you competed against who are tied into the Utah State and Utah program. So I'm not limiting this to BYU, even though I know most of your answers will be BYU. They may not all be. Is there something that you can take away from spring football, for better or for worse, that you know for sure that isn't something that's kind of, a work in progress and is a little bushy?
Yeah, we know for sure that Cam Rising is healthy, that he is back, and that he was full participant in spring ball. And that is awesome that he's out there and he's dressed up, he's suited up, and he's looking good. He's moving well. He's had plenty of time to rest, guys. Plenty of time to rest. So I think that he's going to be as healthy as he could possibly be. And so that is one thing we know for sure, that currently Cam Rising is healthy and he will be the starter. We don't have to guess that maybe he will start against Florida, or maybe he'll be back in 2 weeks, and all the conjecture that went on. And he kind of busted our 60 and 60 again because he was the number one player in the 60 and 60 because everybody was expecting to be back, but he's back. And we can say the same about Brant Keithy, full participant, out there playing well. I've been out to 3 observation periods for the University of Utah. Every time I've been out there, there's a connection between Rising and Keithy. So those guys look really good. Those are 2 things that we can really take away. At BYU, the thing that you can really take away is TJ Woods is coming in, and he is making that his offensive line. And I think you guys would totally agree that offensive line underachieved and needed to improve. I'm not saying that he's a world beater and that he's made this a solid offensive line. That will be seen when we see these games kick off. But I will tell you this, in talking to multiple people, everybody's being held to a higher standard, more accountable. There is and I know that both you and PK know a little bit about TJ Woods. You've probably seen him around through Oregon State, and you knew him through Utah State. He is an aggressive, sometimes abrasive, but a very insistent individual. So he's out there getting things out of that offensive line.
Now, Hans, I understand that you have certain needs in your life, and Yak is going to play one of the needs that you have, and I'm wondering how long it's been since you've had that. Take it away, Yak.
BYU has to do everything they've got to do to improve their pass rush. I need sacks.
Man.
How long has it been since you've had sacks?
2001? No, you sacked Zundel in a mascot bowl about 2008 and broke 7 ribs, so there's that.
I did at Zundel. I did break Zundel in half in about 2007, 2008. I would say my last sack would probably be 2000. My actual, in a game sack would probably be 2006. So it's been a while, PK. It's been a dry spell for me, for sure. But and what's sad is I don't know if I'll be having sacks again anytime soon.
Was that an arena ball?
That was an arena football.
I left out arena ball. Yeah.
Yep.
And you were speaking of BYU specifically getting sacks on the quarterback. And obviously that is something that's extremely important for your defense, for your back end, and obviously up front. And just the sacks are momentum-changing plays. There's no question about that. And it seems like, though, we've been talking about this for a good while relative to the Cougars. What level of confidence do you have that it will improve this season?
Until I see it, I'm just not going to believe it. And I'm not going to sit here and be the hype machine because I just need to see it. Talked to Scotty about this yesterday. They've got the personnel, guys. Gary Anderson, Chad Kawaha'a, Sione Puha, Kelly Popinga. All four of those guys working across the front. All of them in collaboration with film, with expertise, with energy. I've watched them out there coaching. They're high motor. They know what the formula is. They understand how to get there. And it's like I know that they're getting the coaching. Now it's, okay, so is Jack Kelly the kid? Is the Weber State transfer? Is he the kid? I watched Isaiah Banya all year last year. He didn't come across to me as the guy, but they're still pushing him out there, and they're still repping him to be the guy to go get the pressures and go get the sacks. So I want to believe it, but until I see it, I'm just gonna probably be a doubter because it just hasn't happened. I want to see Tyler Batty be unleashed. Tyler Batty had a lot of quarterback pressures. I know if you were to dial up defensive ends with QB pressures, he was like in the top 3 in Big 12 play. That's pressures. But pressures only do so much. You've got to start getting the sacks, forcing the turnovers, forcing the fumbles. So let Tyler Batty get there, make him just a split second quicker, and maybe he turns those pressures into sacks. Other guys that I'm keeping my fingers crossed, like I want to see Ice Moa take the next step because he is a phenomenal athlete. He is an amazing football player, and he's right there. So Ice Moa needs to take the step. And then if it's a freshman like Ephraim Asiata, I'll tell you this, guys, that BYU defensive staff went all in on Ephraim Asiata recruiting, like all in. They targeted him as the guy that will turn the tides, and they poured every bit of resource they possibly could into landing Ephraim Asiata. So does Ephraim Asiata come in and have a freshman year like we saw Van Fillinger have? Van Fillinger, I think, was 5 or 6 sacks in his freshman year and had good production and solid rotation. Is that Ephraim Asiata? Something like that has to give, but until I see it, PK, I'm not going to be the hype machine. I will relay the information that my eyeballs catch through fall camp, and I've relayed it through spring ball. There were some exciting moments and some exciting things, but I am going to reserve full judgment until I see it. And by the way, guys, there's a long-standing goal with the Kyle Whittingham, Gary Anderson, Jay Hill, Sione Puha regime, and that is 30-plus sacks. They were at 11 last year. They've got to improve by 19. So add 19 sacks, find them, and go get them. And think about the difference that would make. It would be a totally different identity of a defense.
So how much of that is identifying talent and developing it, something PK built a couple shows around here, and how Utah has done it and climbed over 20 years through the ranks of college football, identify talent and develop. How much of that is BYU's problem, and how much is they don't have enough NIL in this era to go get the guys who, in a previous era, would have ended up at BYU?
Well, I think through the Ed Lamb Ituiaki time, I think that there was an identity trying to find the defenders that could really rush, because you got to go back to Corbin Kaufusi the last time there was 8 sacks, and you got to go back to Bronson Kaufusi the last time there was 10 sacks. So outside of those two Kaufusis, there's nobody plus 8. There was one year where your highest sack total was 2. It was like 3 guys that had 2 sacks. That was your highest sack total. So I think through Ed Lamb and Ituiaki, for one reason or the other, even though I'm a big believer in Ituiaki, I mean, what he did with Utah's defensive line at the time he was there was proof in the pudding, but I think that it was a talent identification issue. And I think that Ed and E really struggled through that. That's why I think that there was a change to Jay Hill and Kelly Popinga and Justin Inna and this crew that they've got, because they better trust them to go find the talent. So that's why, like Ephraim Asiata, I want to see it, because I watched these guys pour all their resources into it. NIL stuff, DJ, I just don't think that is going to be the blaming point. I actually think that BYU is doing a pretty good job to be competitive with the money they need at the level that they're at. I know BYU is putting a lot of resources into their football, and they're doing everything as high-end and as professionally as they can do it. Kalani's making way more money than any coach has done. This assistant pool is way higher than it's ever been. The way they take care of these athletes, way better than it's ever been. We had Naisa Mahe on yesterday, and he was talking about the Big 12 Pro Day. BYU paid for his flights to go out to the Big 12 Pro Day. That's up to each school. Now, that could fall on the kid, and he has to be responsible for getting out to the Big 12 Pro Day, where they'll house you and they'll feed you. But some of these kids are responsible for their own travel. BYU's giving all 11 of these players that went out there round-trip travel to get there and back. That's something they don't need to do. But BYU they're opening up the books more and more and more, and it's not quite like it's been at BYU. I've been impressed just kind of with the role that I took with BYU as the color analyst. I've been impressed with how they've treated me. I mean, they've treated me like gold. I don't have a negative word to say about how they've treated me and what they've paid me and how they've compensated and taken care of me. It's been impressive.
Quarterback deal obviously always draws attention. You got the race going on at BYU. At this point, I'm not overly alarmed that there isn't a clear cut, because I think there's got a couple of things going on when a kid gets on campus in January and then a few weeks later is in spring ball. I'm not sure I expect him to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and talking about Bohannon. And with the fact that they had a definitive starter in Slovis last year, I want a competition, because if I don't have a competition, that means that I don't have enough depth. So at least I got a competition. I don't necessarily want it into the third week of August, but I'm okay with it right now. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm with you exactly, PK. Yeah, I think you've nailed it. And I think that Retzlaff and Bohannon will push each other pretty hard, and I think that's going to be a good thing. You know, I have zero faith in either one of them, but I have a lot of faith in Aaron Roderick. So that's where I hang my hat, is on Aaron Roderick. I don't feel like either one of those quarterbacks should be a Big 12 starting quarterback, but I believe that Aaron Roderick has a vision of what one or the other is going to do, or what both will do in whatever he's asking them to do. And I've got faith. I mean, watching Zach Wilson bloom into what he bloomed into, and Jaron Hall, I mean, I don't think Slovis gets drafted, but he's probably going to land a camp. So Aaron Roderick's last 3 quarterbacks have some type of NFL relation, including a first-round pick, another drafted player, and a guy who's probably going to get a camp. So I trust Aaron Roderick has a design and a vision, but you know, Retzlaff was 0-4 in his games and threw a really bad pick against Oklahoma and made some really bad mistakes down the line on a couple of games and looked really bad in one game in particular. And I just look at him like, man, he's a hustler. He's Riley Nelson is what he is.
He's got all kinds of energy, and he's got a champion's heart, and he's a champion's mind, and he comes from a championship-like family, and then you get out on the field, and it's like you're outmatched. You're outmatched. Physically, you're outmatched. And the new speed of the pressures off the edge force you into making a hustle decision that plays out poorly. That would have played out incredible in a JUCO. Would have played out incredible in high school. But against Big 12 speed and talent, your hustle gets you in trouble. And I need him to find a way to lasso that, rein it in a little bit. But I have so much belief and respect in Aaron Roderick's process that I believe he'll find a way to get one of those two ready. But I do like the competition, PK.
Why don't you believe in Bohannon? I get if you don't believe a JC quarterback from California can make the transition, well, then you just don't believe that. But, Bohannon had success at Baylor, and they won. And is it just his health, or is it something else?
Well, yeah, health is part of it. But when you go back and just watch Bohannon in that year with Baylor, he had amazing weapons around him, and he had a slow release, and there was nothing real special about his game. He just had a delivery, but he had a really good team around him. I hope that he can get back to that. It'd be great. But when I hear that Retzlaff is leading in the competition, in the quarterback competition, it kind of confirms what the preconceived notion that I had of Bohannon coming into this competition. I watched some of the Big 12 film, some of the Baylor film. I watched it, and it's like there's just nothing that's overpowering with what he does. He doesn't have a quick touch release. He doesn't have what they would call an active arm. He can bomb it, like he's got a big, long lever, but it takes a while to release. But that doesn't mean that stuff can't improve. He's not overly fast off the edge. He is big. He's a big body. He's 6'3". He's probably 230, 235 now. So he's a big body. He maybe take a hit and shrug it off. But and by the way, this is all speculation. This is just early projection of what I think he's going to be, but he could certainly lean up, and Aaron Roderick could work some magic, and things could turn around, and he could be great. But that's why I refuse to say that the quarterback spot is going to be a failure, because I believe Aaron Roderick can get it done, and we've seen it. Like, all of a sudden something clicks for these quarterbacks. Like when Logan Bonner came up to Utah State from Arkansas State, and Blake Anderson and Logan Bonner caught lightning in that first year out there. Setting all kinds of passing records and touchdown records. And Logan Bonner wasn't overly impressive to me coming from Arkansas State. I wasn't like, well, Logan Bonner's going to come in and own the world. And he did. He came in and owned the world and set pretty much every quarterback record you can set at Utah State. So it could happen, because I do believe in Aaron Roderick. It's just I don't have the film or the belief that these quarterbacks are going to blow up the Big 12 next year.
Well, Hans, we will leave it right there and let you go get a protein shake, because there's no real meals until 5 months from now.
What is that, like 150 days?
Ballpark, yeah. I don't know exactly, but 149, Yak says. Yak's in there. He's got a bunch of hash marks on the wall. He's counting it down like some dude in a cell in Shawshank Redemption or something. I don't know.
Well, good thing we've got 125 and 125. So 125 athletes.
And then you put a guy at number one who never plays. It's the great thing about college football. You can't know. And that makes it exciting and interesting.
And that's what's crazy. Retzlaff, honestly, and this is my other opinion, Retzlaff could be Logan Bonner all of a sudden. And he could. That's what's great about this. It's the unpredictability, but you have to take what information you've got in front of you, and you got to relay it honestly. And that's what I'm trying to do with these quarterbacks. But he absolutely could. I would not be overly surprised if he became something beautiful, because Aaron Roderick does love his projects, and he is an amazing quarterbacks coach.
Hans, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. We'll hear you at noon.
Anytime for you too. Thanks, guys.
Hans Olsen, Scotty G, noon to 3, right here today on The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
Can we just wait on the transfer portal till the end of the college basketball season?
That's the boot.
Can we start
Absolutely
it
not.
on April 15th once the season is over?
How are these players expected to go on? If they're forced for an extra
Can we have
minute.
some logic of not opening the transfer portal in the middle of the season?
Absolutely
in
not.
the middle of the most important stretch of basketball?
Not a chance.
Please?
Ben, why do you hate players? This is what people have been saying to me for years. Why do you hate players? He's an American who can go wherever he wants.
Absolutely. You can. When the transfer portal opens, guess what the NCAA controls? The transfer portal and the dates.
Stop
So
hating.
just control it. This is another area where the NCAA tournament has had
control.
opportunities to put on some red tape, some guidelines to make this thing make a little bit of sense.
This
and
is
they failed to do that
America.
as well.
No one can control me. You can control. Look at that. Look at the language you use.
Hear Jake Scott and Ben Anderson every day from 10 to noon on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. BYU's having a cruise to Mexican resorts in April 2025 for all Cougar fans. How fun is that? PK, as a guy who's actually been on a cruise, is that the Mexican Riviera? I know there's a Mexican Riviera. I don't know. Is that in the Caribbean? Is Cancun the Riviera? Or is it down the coast of Baja California? I don't know. But you've done that, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited should Cougar fans be about this stuff?
Well, I think anytime you want to go on a cruise, you're on a vacation, right? So you're excited about it, and then you get to mingle with some of the folks. I suppose some of them would be your heroes or people that you get an opportunity to be around that you're normally not being around. You know, I went on the thing for 4 years in a row with the Jazz Beach Bash, and there were some folks there. I went, and not that anybody was excited to be around me, but you were like-minded people, so you were talking about the Jazz, and there were Jazz fans, and I think from the folks I remember speaking to, it was fun for them. So if you have the finances and the opportunity to go, have at it. You'll have a good time.
Seems like one of those things that people do that even if it's not directly tied to the games, keeps you tied to the games. I mean, for the Jazz, it's junior Jazz. It's kept a lot of people tied to the games. You get a ticket, you get a jersey that's got the Jazz logo on it. You go out there and step on the three-point line and you dream.
If nothing else, you'll be able to tell, I assume some of the coaches will go, you'll be able to tell them how to run their program.
Oh, they'll be looking forward to that. I can just see Kalani and Jay and A-Rod standing on the back of the boat. Oh, this is awesome, isn't it? Yeah. How to recruit that kid at fill-in-the-blank high school. Yeah, I should absolutely. Yeah, he's 3 inches too short and 3 seconds too slow. But sure, yeah, we'll get on it.
When Vance Law was the baseball coach, an opportunity to sit with him at a high school situation where he was scouting, and he was just telling me about how he gets all these referrals, and he's telling me, he says, yeah, I can't recruit every LDS high school kid who starts for his high school team. It just doesn't work that way.
Squeeze them all on the roster, coach. Get her done.
Because mom and dad or somebody's uncle thinks that he's an LDS kid, goes to church, goes to seminary, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and he's hitting 307 in Class 4A ball. So
yeah, exactly. Why aren't they all over him?
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up next, it's intriguing times. Intriguing times, but how will it play out? And how much confidence do you have? The Cougar quarterback situation, the battle continues. That's next. Stay with us.